We are going to follow the money.
Everything you need to know can be understood with this simple phrase: follow the money. And believe me, that's what's happened.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Welcome to College Sports Follow the Money, an all-new podcast diving into the critical issues surrounding the big business of college sports. I'm Andrew Monaco, joined by former president of Texas A&M University and former chancellor at the University of Missouri, Dr. R. Bowen Lofton, and former vice president and general manager of Fox Sports Southwest, John Heike. From NIL to the transfer portal and opt-outs, to the college football playoff, conference realignment, and more, we tackle the key issues facing college athletics today and into the future.
I need to feel you, Jerry! Show me the money! Jerry, you better yell! Show me the money! Show me the money! You loudest black man!
We welcome you to episode number 69 for College Sports Follow the Money. Man, we have a good one for you today, along with Dr. R. Bowen Lofton, with John Heike. We are pleased to be joined by Zinat Ahmed. She's the Executive Vice President of Marketing and Branding. And on November 30th, the Cotton Holdings Lone Star Showdown will be played at Kyle Field. Howdy, everyone.
Howdy.
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 Good to be with everyone. It's another edition here. Zina, ever since you invited us to Cotton and announced the Cotton Holdings Lone Star Showdown, there's been so much excitement. Look, I was at Coach's Night with Mike Elko in February, March, May. Everyone talked about the game on November 30th. He said, hey, we've got 11 games to play before then. But since that announcement, Zina, it has been so exciting. Can you kind of walk us a little bit through the process of how the partnership between Cotton Holdings and Texas A&M and the University of Texas?
Of course. So we have been working with both universities over the past few years from a perspective of we've been working with them using our suite of services. So it was working on their properties and restoring them back to use for the facilities and the students. And over time, we wanted to make that partnership stronger with Texas A&M University. I am an Aggie, class of 16, and it was personally for me, I was personally invested to figure out how can we start to do more with this institution. We have tons of alumni there. We recruit heavily from that incredible organization. And everyone was asking me, oh, how'd you end up at Cotton? HireAggies.com, like, duh. So I've been, at the company for 8 years, and, along the time, we've been just getting our butt kicked where I'm not getting enough Aggie recognition. And over time, slowly started to infiltrate, and then, started having our tailgates on there, started, taking clients. And then we saw something more with the partnership. Our cultures aligned. There was a lot of love that we've had for each other mutually. So then we reached out to start this partnership. And about a year ago, we were finishing our game at ACU. It was last November. And I was talking with Eric from Learfield, and we were talking about, wow, I can't believe that UT is joining the SEC. This is crazy. Hey, I want a seat at the table to talk about this game. I was like very upfront. I want a seat at that table. I want to be a part of that game. I want to be able to say that Cotton Holdings is restoring the rivalry again. And we want to be part of that, this historic, iconic, traditional moment. And we were all talking about like what it takes and what it looks like. And so they took the time to introduce us to our friends over at University of Texas. And we started our relationship there with that organization, the student athletes there as well. And ever since then, we've just built partnerships equally at both schools. And we're so excited for what we get in a few days.
Zina, you used the word restore. It is so fitting after a 13-year absence. It's so fitting for a long-standing, can we say zealous rivalry? Would that be the right? But restore was an important word, was it not?
Absolutely. This is a tradition that's been around for over a century. And the thought of this coming back is so electric. The state of Texas is so enthused. We're so excited. And it works out for us because what Cotton does, we restore commercial properties as one of our many suite of services that we have. So for us, it's exciting to be able to use a nomenclature like that, especially to bring something like this back.
It's good to see that connection between what your core focus is as an organization and this idea of restoration. My mind goes back to my fish year at Texas A&M, Andrew, 1967, before your parents were born, Zena. And I was, my freshman year started off with 4 straight losses in football, and I thought this is going to be a really poor way to start my college career. But then we began winning, and we ended up playing Texas at Kyle Field Thanksgiving Day, 1967, and winning the game 10-7. And I lost my voice. I yelled so much that day that I couldn't even speak for about 3 days after that. So that was the highlight of my entire college career, was that particular game, because after that we just kept losing again. So we had one good season, and I had one great win to watch that particular freshman year. So that's my great memory, my past anyway. I have a few others as well, but that one will never be erased from my mind. It's one of those things that was just totally iconic for me.
Did you rush the field, Dr. Lofton?
Yes, I was on the field. That was allowable. There were no fines or penalties then for that purpose. In fact, most conferences don't mind it, but the SEC does, and you know about that. So we did rush the field. The goalposts did stay intact. They weren't taken down. The yell leaders were taken to the fish pond, and that was one of those great moments that just can't be repeated in my mind anyway, and at the same level. My seat was the very top row of the middle section of the second deck on the east side, which had just been completed, courtesy of my student fees. So we had to pay for that, but we had just begun building the second deck on the east side during my fish year, and only a third of it was done. But I had a seat up there in the top row, and all that kept me from falling to the pavement below was a 2x4. So nobody was really worried about the loss of one freshman or 2 freshmen. It was no big deal.
But Zena, everyone has a story like that on both sides. Was that also important to Cotton?
What the stories he's telling me right now gives us the purpose and the reason of exactly why we're doing this. That is why we're doing this. It's not to have, of course, yes, it's nice to see your brand aligned with these iconic organizations. I love to see it. I love to see my brand right next to my alma mater. That is absolutely exciting. Don't get me wrong. But what he is describing and what he is talking about is why we are doing this. Traditions like that, this is why we do this. This matchup, this head-to-head matchup, anytime they play each other, is tradition. This is a Texas tradition that you can't take that away. Those memories, that is why we're doing what we're doing. And this football game specifically, with it surrounding Thanksgiving, all the stories that come on both sides. I mean, think about how many families have a house divided, and all the stories that they can, a husband and a wife can tell. You hear your grandmother and your grandfather talking about it. There's coworkers who are bantering when they see each other after Thanksgiving. This is why we do what we do, because the traditions, and that's what I meant earlier, that our cultures align so deeply with both of these organizations.
So John, it's bragging rights, right?
So Zena, you actually went to A&M first. That's what I'm sensing in the conversation so far. And then you approached University of Texas Austin secondly. Were you as eagerly received there as you were at the Texas A&M side in terms of the conversation about this potential sponsorship?
I will say those guys are pretty good at what they do. They're very hospitable at the end of the day. And I think for all of us, the partnership comes first. For the game itself, next week, I'm going to be wearing a neutral color. I'm not going to be even wearing maroon. I'm going to stay neutral. I've been in my blacks and my neutrals because I'm putting the our rivalry first. I'm putting that first. So they were very hospitable. They were very eager and excited. They saw all the magical things that we've done together with A&M, and they thought, like, the sky's the limit with us too. Let's go for it. And it only helps me and Cotton spread our gospel all over the state and globally as well. So it's exciting for us.
It'll be the most watched game, I'm sure, that particular day. There's no doubt about that.
I will be stunned if the numbers are low and it's not the most, Dr. Lofton. I'll be stunned.
Yeah.
We know it's 6:30 for sure. That's the window for ABC. And I think we're all kidding ourselves if we thought it was going to be in another window. That's for sure.
It will easily be the most watched game that night. It'll be probably certainly north of 10 million viewers when it's all said and done.
You're right, John. And as I mentioned before, John, from the Southwest Conference into the Big 12, and now both being back in the SEC, we're talking bragging rights in offices, right, John? I mean, that's always been part of this, the tradition of this rivalry as well, hasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly one thing that we've missed, not having Texas, playing from the last 10 years. It's great when you beat Alabama or Auburn, but you don't have a whole lot of Auburn, Alabama guys in your cubicle next to your office next to you where you can kind of give them that little dig. So I do think, again, it's happening already. All my Longhorn friends are coming out of the woodwork looking for tickets now. So it's been amazing on that front. So again, one interesting thing, Andrew, you brought it up, and I can go back in history, was back in the day when A&M first started playing Texas on Thanksgiving on television on ESPN under the old CFA agreement, before ESPN got the NFL rights. That was the Thursday night games were probably the three that they had were in the top 5 of the most watched viewed events on ESPN back in the day. So, I mean, this game had national significance even back then when I was in Connecticut trying to tell people about, this is the Aggies and the Longhorns, and they had no idea who was which. So, but it certainly means something across. We're so glad it's back. And I think, again, for Zina, for you, I mean, with your branding of a company that's based on restoring and the restoration, that certainly is a home run for you in terms of the message that you can get out. But I'll be honest with you, when I first heard Cotton Holdings, that would not have been the first company that probably jumped to the top of my list to sponsor something like this. Is this something, as you look at it, and you're going to measure the impact of it in terms of is it business-to-business opportunities, bringing more clients, connecting? Is it brand awareness? I'd love to get your thoughts on some of what you feel, other than being a great ag and being a part of this, what else is going to be benefiting your organization?
Absolutely. John, that is a fantastic question, because what Cotton does, we work primarily in B2B spaces. And so if you don't need our services that we provide, you probably won't hear of the name Cotton. I'm very well aware of that. EVP of marketing, but I'm still very well aware of what people on the outside would be looking at. So an opportunity like this gets me in front of a B2C market that I would not have the opportunity for. It kind of helps me jump that hurdle and get right in front of people, whether it's in front of their television, on social media, getting in front of them with the branding. Even if you're looking at the news right now, you'll see the Cotton Oval pop up with the Lone Star Showdown logo, getting ready for the game next week. It's 70 degrees, it's gonna be beautiful, but who do you see in the corner? Our logo. So that is very exciting for me. I have an opportunity to speak to an audience that I normally don't get to. And so something like this, using everyone's love of sports, can bring us all together. And I absolutely understand that, it's probably not the first name that you would assume, but we are also a company with Texas roots. So we are from here, 1996, from Houston. We have alumni across both schools. So for us, it absolutely makes sense. It was an intentional decision. It gives me an opportunity to speak to audiences that I normally wouldn't, and also think about it for the organization as well. We get to recruit from a prime group of students who just saw us at a game. These student athletes who may have just played at this game, whether it's volleyball, basketball, football. I have an opportunity that I wouldn't be able to. They probably just saw it. Oh, I saw your logo on the field. So it gives me an opportunity to recruit as well. So there's so many benefits beyond just seeing the logo on the field or on the apron of the field.
Mm-hmm. I see behind your shoulder here a football. That's what I put. Now, are you going to put the game ball there when you get this game behind you and you take it home with you?
Well, actually, in our offices, I have a pretty cool setup. So all of our game balls, we're very lucky that we get to also partner with other organizations in sports. Sure. I get to start collecting all the balls, and I have them all behind me in a different conference room, actually.
Excellent. Well, I hope I can see later on a softball, a soccer ball, a basketball, all the balls we're going to be able to compete against.
I actually
to
have
you
a
with.
volleyball from the very first head-to-head matchup, which was women's volleyball
Wow.
back in the summer. So I have that game ball in my
There you
office,
go.
actually.
Love it.
So
Zena,
Zine,
one
that's a
thing.
good point. One
Go
of the
ahead,
things
John.
about the Lone Star Showdown when it was in its prior reiteration was that, you know, they earned points. That was, I believe it was one of the insurance companies, State Farm, maybe. I'm trying to draw a blank, but they were able to award points, activate at different events. Are you looking to do something similar along that and being able to take the brand out to across all the other sports and create something that would be be gathering points toward an overall, championship in the rivalry, if you will?
So, John, we are still accruing points as we're going. The point system is still back. We actually have that on the tickers on the website, so you can see how each school is faring. We won the last volleyball game, so we have some points up there. I believe it was 0.5, and then women's soccer also garnered some points for the Longhorns. So we are still the rivalry is still there. So we are accruing points. We're looking at that. The matchup is still there. In terms of, just getting the name out there and activations and such, yeah, absolutely. However, we can get in front of those students, however, we can get in front of larger audiences to explain the love that we have for communities, we're actively going to be working to do that. So you're going to be seeing us at all of the games. You're going to be seeing us. We've had presence at every single game thus far of the matchup, and we're planning to continue to do that because it's much more than just a brand sponsorship. And that is why both organizations chose us, because we have a desire of meeting their expectations of the partnership. A partnership goes both ways. And we want to make sure that we give back to both organizations equally, whether it is showing up and not just taking a photo and leaving. It is being there, watching the whole game, supporting them on social media, wishing both groups luck. That is part of it. We feel like we are part of this organization, both of these organizations.
Zena, we talk about this in the way college athletics is moving, that colleges now are brands upon themselves, and that makes them attractive, whether it's Power Four moving forward, whether there's going to be a Super Division One, things like that. But this has to be a partnership that makes sense for both, right? Cotton is a brand, A&M brand, Texas brand. You've got to have brands that you partner with make Cotton shine the same way you want to make A&M and Texas shine. Like, this has to work for all the parties, doesn't it?
Of course. And that's why we take this very seriously, because of course, I don't want my brand with an organization that I don't align with and that this organization doesn't align with. Cotton takes it very seriously of where we take our time and our money. And so that means I want to make sure that they have the same roots and cultures and desires to win, the same cultures of family and tradition and all the things that are embedded in our culture. And we see that in both these organizations. That's why you see such passionate alumni who are so excited. If they see the Cotton logo now, they'll stop and say, hello, I heard that you guys are sponsoring the game. Thank you so much. It's building a broader community that I didn't even know existed. And so college sports itself, Andrew, you were so right. It's such an interesting economy that surrounds it. And there's a whole community that pros don't even understand. And where I'm sitting, I have a very privileged opportunity and lens to get to see college sports, but then also pros here in Houston. And then the spirit that college brings, it's unmatched. Our first partnership started at A&M, and it just gave us a taste of it. I got to have an opportunity to understand NIL. We did our first NIL sponsorship last year with Connor Wigman prior to this sponsorship with A&M, actually. So we got to understand a few of those things. Now, how do we merge his brand, our brand, and A&M's brand? And that was a whole project right there. It was a whole rodeo that I absolutely loved. So talking about mixing images, names, likeness, etc., but like organization, people, there's a whole industry out there.
Zena, can you talk a bit about your own self? You're an Aggie, you said, class of 16. Where are you from, and how did you come to A&M, and what major did you have? I'm just kind of curious about your own background.
Yes, sir. So I am born and raised Texan. I'm a first generation Texan. My parents are from Bangladesh, and they started in Dallas, and that's where I had the privilege to start my first 18 years. And I had no clue where I wanted to go. And people nowadays, if I meet someone, they're like, "You went to A&M?" And I'm very confused why they say like, yeah, of course I went to A&M. And believe it or not, it's the weirdest thing. Usually some gals or guys would say, "You look like you would go to UT." And I find that very confusing. I don't understand. Are you expecting me to be in a different Getty? Like what are you insinuating? I think A&M has given me so many things that no other organization could have. So I started at A&M with a major in communication and a minor in business. So I got to be able to see so many different things. And A&M opened so many doors for me. I was able to intern in California with other brands, and it's opened so many doors for me in communities. And then it actually has given me my current job. I started just as a social media manager about 8 years ago here at Cotton. And through the years and connections and just the things that A&M has taught me to do, I've had about 4 positions. I'm on my 5th right now. So I've been taught very early on from my roots as an Aggie, and how can I put that in my day-to-day work? So 8 years later, I'm still using things that I was taught.
Very good. It's a very, very common Aggie story. In fact, you didn't have a sense of, when you grew up here, where you wanted to go, but you figured it out.
Yeah.
I'm sure you had various impacts from your teachers and your counselors and others in your circle of friends about where to go to school, and you picked Texas A&M, and then Texas A&M picked you, and that made a difference, didn't it, over time? That's what I hear. I've talked to this thousands of students over the time. I was president in since, and so I've heard stories kind of like yours over and over again. And I'm so glad that you found us and that A&M found you.
I'm absolutely honored, and it's no elephant in the room that football is a huge attraction. And I grew up watching college football since I was little. My dad and I would always watch it on Saturdays, start in the AM and watch it all the way to the PM. And so I grew up in front of television. So I was in the era of sitting, and I would watch so many of these legends when I was younger. And so I didn't even know where I wanted to go to school. It wasn't UT versus A&M, and there was nothing like that. But I remember college football being a part of it. And whenever I was going through my applications, I do remember my father saying, "Well, they do have good football." And
I like your dad already.
And that's what started a huge love story for me.
Zena, you're going to end up talking to Dr. Heike's class.
Yeah.
Right, John?
Yeah, she's already on the list. You guys may be bumped. You guys are moving down. We got a star right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Believe me, John, they're going to learn a lot more from Zena than they will from me. You know that.
Not true. We're in the presence of a legend.
They love you. They always, anyone who wants to aspire to be the voice of fill in the blank, you're their hero.
Yeah, that's right. And that's how it was for me a little bit. Who's hiring, right?
Yeah. Zena, one of the things too, I think that would love to get your thoughts now is again, as we move into a new world our podcast is obviously called Follow the Money, but with now NIL money, the things that are happening, the House settlement, it's basically, we're going to have to fulfill another $20+ million for not just A&M, but all the major schools. How important is corporate support going to help to do that? And what you're doing here, I think, again, we're going to see probably a lot more relationships like what you're doing in your company, but I'd love to get your thoughts on that particular area of the business as it grows forward from your perspective, sitting in a corporate America seat.
Of course. And I think that's a very good question, and something that isn't asked enough. And I actually do find people making it almost taboo. It is absolutely okay for organizations to inject capital into the community. And we do it through student athletes. We do it through working with community partners like A&M, like UT. I think it's a very good use of funds, because you're investing in your future. These student athletes, these are our future leaders in corporate America or whatever it is that they want to pursue. So I think it's a very good use of time and money. And those student athletes, they bring a lot to the table. Someone on my team, her name is Nikki, she played in volleyball at her school. And I actually see her culture of everything that she learned in volleyball in her everyday, the way I see her brain move. She's very dynamic. She's very quick. She's on her feet. She can take feedback because she was a student athlete. She got up very early in the mornings. She left it all on the court. So I see those things in her everyday life where she's running around making magic happen for me here at Cotton. So I can easily attest that this brand would love to support and get behind those students.
I have a friend who owns a company that he will not hire anyone who did not play on a team, man or woman. It's interesting, Zina, the way you say that. The lessons learned from sports are lessons in business. And whether it's go-getting, whether it's I've got to get up early for practice, or I have to be ready for practice, or I have to take care of myself, it's interesting. And now that you're aligned with universities, there's a reason why the Aggie network is so strong. It's a reason why we call it the Aggie family, right? This now, to be a part of this, at some point, your playing career is going to end. No one's ever played till 65 or 70. Just not going to happen, right? And that's the beauty of all of this. What happens after my playing career is over for not just football, volleyball, baseball, softball, soccer, right? All of that. Here are opportunities for these student athletes, correct?
Absolutely. And that's why we take the recruiting aspect of this very seriously. So whenever we were making this deal, it wasn't just like, hey, where's my logo going? What tickets am I getting? It is beyond that. So what is my ROI? Can you get me in front of those students? Can we talk about career fairs? Can we talk about how I can, personally meet with these? So our talent acquisition director, she goes out there to both schools, both organizations. She shakes hands. She meets with the recruiters. We're going to be setting up our own career fairs with the student athletes. And then also I want to parlay that and get in front of the construction science students. I also want to get in front of the communication students, the business students. There's so many different educations and disciplines that we can get in front of beyond just the student athletes as well. So I want to parlay that sponsorship and partnership and work together. Like, how can we help each other? So how can I help your students go to their next phase in life, like you were saying, Andrew? And then how can I get some good talent that will last and, help take Cotton to a different level as well? So it's mutually impactful for all of us.
And Zina, it really has to be, because if it's just one-sided, the partnership doesn't last very long, correct?
Something that I always say that doesn't make sense, whenever we start a partnership, I come in kind of hot, right? We all do. My team does, the organization does, and it seems aggressive at first. And it's with all due respect, hold my beer, give me a second, let us get after it, and then walk away from it, and you will see how we helped each other. And so, for example, our tailgate next week, we're going to be in Aggie Park, and I am already starting to ruffle some feathers. I need to bring in our restroom trailer. Like, these are our services. These are our assets. I need to make sure the tent is up to par with how we do our Cotton way. So we're coming in kind of hot, ruffling some feathers, but at the end of it, we're going to be his best client yet. He's going to see that Cotton cares. Cotton has a certain level of expectation. And that is something that every single partner that I've finished any sort of event or partnership with, they're like, can y'all come back? We love working with you guys. They love to see that these companies and corporations are far more than just writing a check. We want to be involved if we're doing any sort of, and so we work in disaster relief as one of our service lines. So, a hurricane that just impacted Asheville, we're out on the front lines giving back to that community. We're not just writing a check. Of course, we are there responding, but we're in front of them with our foundation, giving back to those communities that we work in. So that is very important for us.
So you start with involvement, and then as the partnership grows through the years, it evolves.
I love
correct?
That. I'm writing that down, actually.
Well, let's see, Zina, you're going to be around before the game, I'm sure. You realize we rescheduled the yell practice that Friday because of the concert, which is also part of your thinking as well. But I can see you out there with yell eaters right now telling a story. Can you do that for us?
Do I get the overall?
Yes. Yes, you do.
I'd like to see you in that. Yes.
I'm in.
Zina's going to start with got a little story for you, Ags.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
But But that's all part of it also, right, Zena? It's not just November 30th.
Absolutely. And Andrew, you're hitting on the one point that I wanted to make sure. So when we had invited everyone in the summer in July, or was it August? It was in August, to announce this partnership. And this deal has been in the works for a very long time. We've just had to keep our lips sealed and just be very quiet about it. So anytime the rivalry would come up, I'd be like, yeah, I'm excited. Can't wait to be there. And then in the back of my head, I'm like, can't wait to be there and see my logo. But that's for another day. It is just not football. It is also non-football sports as well. It's important for us to make sure that those ladies who work very hard in women's volleyball, basketball, soccer, they also get the limelight and like the spotlight. And like I told you guys, the first matchup that I was able to see from the Cotton Lens was UT and A&M's volleyball match in Reed Arena, and unfortunately it wasn't, or I can't say that. The Longhorns won. I was neutral. I went to the locker room to go hand them their trophy, and just seeing that passion, that excitement. The girls are throwing Gatorade. They're like excited. They're pushing their coach around. They're all like screaming, yelling. They're just fired up to get that point on their scoreboard. It doesn't matter who you're rooting for at that moment. I know it's crazy to say, but at that moment, I was just so happy to be another human existing in their orbit at that moment, and watching those girls just be fired up. That's why we do what we do. And again, it's beyond just football. We are very excited for football, but there's a lot of other sports that we're excited to be part of. Baseball is coming up very soon too. A lot of excitement with basketball as well. There's a lot of good energy occurring.
Dana, I imagine your phone has been ringing from other potential schools that are wanting to probably get involved with you. Have you noticed that to be the case since this announcement was made?
Respectfully, my happiest and worst days are on days we go to market. It's very exciting for us to get to launch a deal that we've been working on, and it's super exciting. And then that very moment, call it noon on, my phone and emails are stacked with the next organization, and then like the next pro sport. I get more from pro sports, believe it or not, than college. So we're always excited to invest in something that makes sense for all of us, where we can impact broader communities, athletes, things like that. I don't mind it, but it does happen.
Yeah. You're everybody's best friend after that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And my wallet.
Thank you for your time. We're going to have you back.
I would love to. I would love to. And seriously, thank you, all of you, for taking the time to learn about Cotton and just seeing us beyond just a sponsor. So we are very appreciative of that. So thank you.
Zena, thank you so much.
See y'all.
Look forward to seeing you next week.
That's a good one.
There you go.
As we continue with our episode of Follow the Money with Dr. Lofton and John Heike, we had Dr. Lofton, a fight at Cowboy Stadium, and it wasn't by the Dallas Cowboys. There hasn't been a lot of fight by them this year. Sorry, that was a cheap shot.
That was a cheap shot. True, but cheap.
Okay, I'm not sorry.
The truth hurts.
Yeah. Tyson, Paul, Netflix. I don't know what comes out of that more than Netflix struggled with that. Going forward, that's something Netflix is going to have to fix if Netflix wants to not get in this business of streaming sports, because they've got NFL coming up, but staying and being a reliable partner in the future.
I think the interesting thing, Andrew, there is that has been probably the narrative that Netflix struggled. I'd like to kind of take the reverse look at it. One of the things that they did was they had over 60 million people, concurrent streams at any one point in time. And even if you look at the NFL games on streaming, they're 15 million. So, I mean, that's 4 times the number of people that were there. So we've never seen an event that's drawn that many people to a concurrent an event at one time, bringing that many subscribers. And so what my sources told me, I reached out and called a couple of folks, was that most of the server issues that they had were only the United States, which was interesting. And globally, it apparently that they didn't have the type of buffering issues that we had here. And so from Netflix perspective, and if you're a league like the NFL, and you're seeing that where that game now is being seen globally, you've got to start to salivate a little bit about what that means for the brand and for the Shield and what other leagues are out there. For Netflix, it was a good learning experience for them because, again, some people someday said they should stream the Super Bowl. Well, if you stream the Super Bowl, that's going to be a couple of 100 million people probably, at any one point in time. And so I think, again, they learned something from that. It also, I think, again, it's for even if you're Netflix, if you had 60 million people coming from a live, and they got, again, a sporting event, and I put quotation marks around that since you can't see me, but it was still, again, what they were able to bring in from that aspect. I think it's going to, if I was any league out there in the country right now, I'm feeling good about it because now Netflix most likely is going to eventually to work their way into this bidding process. They've got the NFL games coming up on Christmas. And I think, again, even that will probably be, close to, 20 million, maybe if they knock it out of the park. So I think they'll now have a chance to work through their issues, go back and analyze where they had any issues with bufferings and probably create a stronger infrastructure to handle the type of pressure that they'll be getting for that particular game. So that's interesting. But I do think, again, at the end of the day, if I'm in the sports media world, you had to feel good about those numbers because, again, if that's something that Netflix or any other streaming partners can be deliver, that's going to have significant value when the day comes for other teams' deals to be up, and hopefully that Netflix is sitting at the table with their checkbook ready to come to get deeper involved with this process. So even though they had issues, I still think, again, it was a very positive thing for the sports industry.
Agree. How then do you earn the trust back from the people where it all buffered?
That's a good thing. Hopefully they give some, rebates or, they, whatever that looked like. We knocked, again, this wasn't a pay-per-view fight like back in the day where they could give you, they would give you the total rebate if you had issues. They'll probably need to do something on their customer service side to do it. And I guess that would be something they've kind of got to work through. But if they're able to do that and keep that customer happy, knowing that they can deliver and they're having a good experience watching it, I think they'll be fine. But probably they had to do a little bit of damage control, but who doesn't over some point in time?
And John, does every other streaming service also say, okay, we've got to be ready in case we get the 60 million? You know what I mean? Like, was it also an eye opener for them?
Yeah, I think so too. I think I was surprised it did 60 million, to be honest with you. Again, it was more of an exhibition. But one of the things that was interesting to the people that I taught, even in my class that I taught, I asked the students, I said, who's going to watch this fight? 90% raised their hand. They all knew who Jake Paul was. Because they knew who Jake Paul was, they did some homework on Mike Tyson. And I said, Mike was in my era, and so I want to watch that. So it connected generational viewers across, from grandparents to grandkids, from that standpoint. So I think, again, once we see a little bit more of the numbers, it'll be interesting to see what as they release some of how long were the people watching, what was the feedback, where were the viewers coming from. I think that will even be more valuable data to see. But I do think, again, for an event like that was, would you call it made for TV, made for streaming, something along those lines? Probably. AT&T housed it, so you had all the major players there. But to still do 60 million, think about it, a Super Bowl does 100 million. Right. And this event is far cry from the Super Bowl. So again, I was fascinated by the numbers and wait to see more where the global numbers came from this as well. And I'm sure some of that information will start to trickle out as the days go by.
So we see streaming become, much more common as far as how people view their college sports. Even my concern was this might have turned people off. You're telling me even if it does, they'll fix that. But the real I guess answer here is we had so many more people coming to the table than we thought we would have anyway. Yeah. And this speaks well of the future, probably, as well as we see more and more opportunities for streaming to put things out there in front of a very large audience.
Yeah. I think that's the one takeaway from it was that again, and even though Netflix is a subscription service, so you have to pay for it, but I believe they've got 200 million, probably customers. I think I've seen the number. But think about it, that's a quarter of their fans roughly, or 20% tuned in for this event. So to me, that was fascinating. And so I think, again, if I'm in the sports media industry and in the ecosystem here, to see them delivering that large a number for that type of event, again, just think what the Super Bowl might be, an SEC championship, the Lone Star Showdown, those types of things in there could create significant value there. I mean, Andrew and I had this conversation before, and I think you were involved in it too. And it's not, it's again, you go back again, always can learn from history here. But back in the day when and the Big 12 gave the schools their ability to do their own games, we had the rights to Oklahoma at Fox Sports Southwest. And one of the things that we had to do to take advantage of our one game was we needed to put it on pay-per-view. All right. And so at pay-per-view, then think about it, you had to have cable first, and then you had to be able to go buy, get the pay-per-view aspect of it. You couldn't just go out and do it on the internet and get it. All right. And this is, again, during that period of time, we would generate close to 40 to 60,000 buys just for an OU pay-per-view game against Sisters of the Poor. We would make close to $4 million on that. If we put it on and sold advertising on it, the most we probably would make was 200,000. So you think about it and so there's a market there for that fan base that wants to see that content. It was there in the pay-per-view. So think about if you put an OU game now, a similar situation on a streaming event, and their fans, every OU fan can get it with a click or from a streaming or being part of a network, or if I'm having Netflix and they give me that value, that's significant to a company like Netflix to see that. So I think if I'm Netflix right now, I'm going to be a lot more interested in bidding on those rights when they come up, if I can put them in that type of environment as time goes on. So again, as someone in the sports media world with a background in that, I thought that was even again, they had the buffering issues, and again, sometimes that's to be expected when you have that, when they've never experienced that type of event before. But I'm sure they'll clean that up. But again, it's fascinating by the overall viewership that was able to be generated by that. And again, it was consistent with what we did back with pay-per-view back with Oklahoma back in the day.
One interesting thing now is with the Big 12 starting next year, games on ESPN Plus are now being sub-licensed to Turner. Now we know Turner has some of the college football playoff, but that's now another step. Is that a move by the Big 12 to kind of take a hard look at their TV partners? And is it necessarily going to be just Turner, Fox, ESPN to streaming play, do you think, in the future for the Big 12?
I think a streaming play is probably in line for everybody. When it's all said and done, as they get more sophisticated and get more experience on how this thing happens and watch what's happening in the marketplace. You brought up an interesting point, Andrew, about just how that whole deal kind of came together. What was fascinating about that was that as part of that old NBA settlement, to take away their, suing for trying to get those back end rights, the league kind of did, there was a little bit of old fashioned horse trading, if you will. And again, I think the Big 12 came out pretty well from that, because they had games moved from the ESPN Plus platform. Even today, more people are going to watch games on broadcast than ESPN Plus. It's just not part of the consumer. 100% of the sports consumers aren't just used to getting ESPN Plus yet. It's easier for them to watch it on Turner. So I think from the Big 12's perspective, they moved a game from an area that was going to probably be less viewed into an area that's going to have greater viewership. I think they got 12 to 13 games or something along those lines. So they win. ESPN wins because now they get some more content, which their world is built on, about getting the Pat McAfee shows, the Manning cast. They're now getting inside the NBA, and they'll probably create more content inside of that, that group of talent to cover other things. And you could just think about those guys doing the CFP football show. Seeing Chuck out there trying to break down that's got to be must-see TV. So there'll be things like that will happen. So I think everybody won in that. But going back to your original question, I do think, again, streaming is here to stay. And I think, again, that there are going to be events like that are going to drive it. And at some point in time, as more and more people get comfortable with that technology, I think, again, and if I'm in the streaming business, what it does for me is it means I've got to have some package of live sports so I can consistently try to bring these types of viewership and content to that platform. And I think that's what's going to be special about it, too.
Could the Pac-12, was the timing just off? Was it just too early? And then the follow-up, will the new Pacific Coast Conference, I don't know what the number is going to be, the Midwest and the American also look into that as they want to increase their television rights? Because schools stayed because they weren't going to be getting enough. Or, I know what they did with UNLV, but I'm wondering with these other conferences, if that's how they look, if they can find that potential partner to give them the money for those schools.
Yeah, I think again, if the Pac-12 could have survived, you have Oregon right now. Are they number one? I
Yeah.
can't.
Yes.
They're number one. So here's
Yep.
Oregon, and if you had Oregon playing SC, and SC was a little bit better than they were, and that game was on a streaming environment, it would probably do close to 10 million viewers too, I would think. Just because of, again, if you've got SC fans living in other parts of the world, they could have tuned in for that. That would have juiced those numbers up versus just being on American television. So I think I think that would have been fascinating. I think the Pac-12 had a lot of problems,
Right.
their strategy, but I think again, if they could have stayed another year and had a program like that, that would have really helped whatever streamer was in their as their partner, could have really helped them keep them going in ways that the conference wouldn't have dissolved like it did.
I had to chuckle that after our last episode, when we were talking about Kurt Cignetti at Indiana, who's still undefeated at the moment, there were some Hoosiers on X saying, "Don't you touch our coach." Dr. Lofton, we're getting into the time of year where schools will pay to keep their coaches. Agents are working to see what's best for their coaches. And there are some coaches that are going to be having a change of address. We're at that time of year, aren't we?
We are, although it's earlier and earlier every year. I think people have less patience than they used to have. I mean, Coach Brown at UMass is out, obviously. Inexpensive firing. I'm told 1.4 million maybe is the buyout for him. So it wasn't much, but his record, 2-8. I mean, 2-8. That's not good.
Right.
People want to get stuff done. Tom Herman was a bit of a surprise, I think, how quickly that happened. Tom's been through some rough spots. As you know, he had a great record at Houston. He had a winning record at Austin, but it wasn't good enough for the folks there. And he's been turned out at FAU now. And I'm told it's about $4 million there to buy him out. So these aren't expensive buyouts by the standards set by some that I could mention. But there's still buyouts that have to be done. Searches have to be done. At least these two schools are going to be out looking at a time when coaches may become available in a more regular kind of way. Oddly, at FAU, Herman had fired his assistant coordinator, who's been rehired now by the administration to keep him around while Herman's shown the door. I thought that was just fascinating to have that happen right there. But IU's interesting. I think that the coach there just got a big pay raise. His contract was almost doubled from $4.25 million per year to $8 million per year, with a $1 million per year retention bonus on top of that. It takes him from the bottom of the Big Ten up to top 5 membership in the coaching compensation in the Big Ten, which is a big step. But this guy has done some pretty good stuff. I mean, his work at Madison was really quite successful. He's come along and taken a program which nobody ever thought would be a big deal in football. I mean, IU's history is not football. It's somewhere else, as we know. And to have that happen fairly quickly. We'll see how this Ohio State game goes. He may not have his perfect record much longer, but I mean, you got to say this guy has some real ability to fire up his players and get them to perform at a very high level. And that's seen as valuable to the extent IU wants to keep him around, extending his contract through 2032 and almost doubling its value. That to me was a big jump for them.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the details, how much is guaranteed and things like that, but I'm guessing it's probably a fully guaranteed contract or close to it. And so this guy is being rewarded for being successful, which is okay. No problem with that. Those who I mentioned earlier, Brown and Herman, not so much. And we'll see a few more of those, I think, pretty quickly right now over the next few weeks here as the season winds down. We got just a couple of weeks to go, and we'll see what happens then. Those that don't make bowls, things like that, that's when you begin to clean house and begin searching for a coach before everybody else does. So I think we're going to see some action ramping up real quick, guys.
Let me add a timeline to that. The Monday in December, the first Monday, is when the transfer portal opens.
Yes.
So if you don't have a coach or a staff, you're behind. Two things. You don't know who's leaving, and you don't know who wants to come to your school. The timing could be absolutely awful for some of for some of these schools? Or do you keep the coach? But that's really tough because if you don't want to keep him and want to get rid of him, you don't want him and that staff making decisions for the next guy. It's tricky this time of year.
It is very tricky. That's why I think FAU and UMass got ahead of the curve. Somebody said, let's cut our losses right now. It's not going to go anywhere. Let's get rid of the guy and go on. Keeping that DC at FAU was, to me, an interesting move. I think that was their deliberate ploy to try to give them stability in a time of instability, to give them a heads up on that portal operation coming up really soon. So I can understand why that was happening, and I can really tell you these guys were smart enough to go ahead and just do it. Others are probably waffling yet about it. I know how it goes. It's not easy. It's not easy at all to get rid of a coach. It's emotional. It's also financial. There are many aspects to doing it, and I've had to go through it personally, and it wasn't fun. But I think that these schools have just said, this guy's not working out. We're going to go ahead, make it happen, and they'll have I'm hearing through the grapevine, they're working really hard to get a new HC identified quickly. So I'll be very surprised they don't have an HC named before the game next weekend.
That quick?
Well, not this weekend, but the weekend.
No, I know. I'm saying,
in November here, before the portal opening.
Dr. Lofton, you almost have to. Again, the deadlines for all of it, because the longer it's unsettled, then other schools start negatively recruiting, saying you don't want to go there. They don't have anybody set up. You have that at play. I mean, it can be negative enough, but you're behind the eight ball. And again, Dr. Lofton, let's be honest. You should know who the next coach is. If you're about to make a change, you better have an idea of who's next.
A question for you, John. On UMass is going to the MAC. Okay, they're transitioning conferences right now. What difference will that make in terms of their sort of checkbook? Will they be able to be competitive at a higher level for coaching staff than they have been in the past?
I don't know the exact. I'm sure the MAC has a larger television deal than
I think so.
The Atlanta 810. Is that where they're coming from?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So again, that they're going to have to worry about, I don't know if it's still the case, but I think it's this last month of October, November, and they don't even plays on Saturday anymore. I mean, the MAC's all over the map where they play, but they get money, they get increased revenues from their television partners to do that. I'm sure it's going to let them move up a level, and it would probably be able to enhance what they could do to recruit a coach, because they'll have some more funds to work with. But I think, again, they're a group that's trying to continue to, move up in neighborhood or up in class, if you will. So when the next round of everything comes, because I think UMass, they're one of those schools that probably outpunches their weight class. And if they could continue to do that and grit the right players in, just like James Madison did, there's an opportunity for programs like that to continue to move up and knock on the door. I mean, certainly what you've seen SMU do, I'm not saying it's the same level, but, a lot of people have said they're jumping from the AAC to the AAC, if I've got that right. And what they're doing right now is an incredible story. You talk about coaches right now who probably after Signetti, I think probably the next guy that's probably doing the best job out there in terms of that is Rhett Lashley at SMU. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see that. But if they could get a coach like that next young coach who wants to be, and again, think about Signetti too. He's older than most of these guys. So I don't think he's looking to make that next step. I think he's going to probably be at Indiana now till they build a statue out there someday, even if they get beat this week against Ohio State. But I think Lashley's going to be one of these guys now that's going to be on, for the power four, if you will. If they're looking for a coach, I think his name will be at the top of the list, as well as Dion right now. Who thought Dion would have, to be where he is right now? But he's been an incredible story, and what's going on at CU this fall.
Yes, talk about him actually going to Dallas. Interesting, huh?
As a guy who's lived in Dallas forever, that would just continue to create the most.
I would love to be in the room with him and Jerry Jones. I would love to be able to see that.
That's must-see TV.
Well, at least Herman's available. Maybe
we can dream.
We'll see him. We'll see him. We'll find out. Anyway,
what a fun episode. Very fun episode. Happy Thanksgiving to you both.
And to you too, my friend Andrew.
Thank you. Nick Savage, same to you. Happy Thanksgiving, our producer. What were you going to say, John?
Are we done?
Sure, we can be. It's whatever you guys want. You know what? We're done. That's how we're ending it. Hey, Zinat Ahmed, who is the Executive Vice President, Marketing and Branding. We thank her for joining us from Cotton Holdings and that Lone Star Showdown coming on November 30th. For Dr. R. Bowen Lofton, for John Heike, as I said, for our producer, Nick Savage, I'm Andrew Monaco. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next edition of College Sports Follow the Money. So long, everybody.